Hey, John. Do you
Hey,
want
Veronica.
do you want to get high on Ripple?
What?
Ripple, man. Do you want to get high on it?
Oh, you're doing like Jodie Foster in the movie?
Yeah, but I just could you tell me what Ripple is? I'm trying. I just want to be hip with the kids of yesteryear, and I don't know what Ripple means, and I feel really bad about it.
Veronica, you're trying to be cool with young people by copying a child from a literally 50-year-old movie?
Yes.
Well, you know what I gotta say? You could kiss me where the sun don't shine.
Toot, toot, John. Toot, toot. Wow.
Do you think High on Ripple, do you think that catchphrase made it to the TV adaptation?
I don't know. I mean, up your nose with a rubber hose. That was one of them, right? No, suck it to me.
I want to jump into the language of this movie, but first we should introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm John.
Hi, I'm Veronica. And who are we?
And who are we?
Who are we?
We are singers, but we're currently stuck working the dead-end job of being hosts of Box Office Time Machine, the show where we take a look at a number one movie at the box office, either from the current weekend or, in this case, a weekend 50 years ago. We are discussing Martin Scorsese's 1975 movie, Alice Does Not Live Here Anymore.
Yes.
Which sounds like a horror movie.
I actually, that's maybe a good place to start because
about how it's not a horror movie.
Well, no, but rather I also had a mistaken impression about this movie coming into it because I mean, all I basically knew is it stars Ellen Burstyn like right after The Exorcist, essentially. That's her next movie, directed by a very young Martin Scorsese. I think like his one other big movie was Mean Streets at that point. So
was he closer in age to Alice or her son when he directed this movie?
That's a great question. I think, well, I read in the Wikipedia that the way that Martin Scorsese ended up directing this was that Ellen Burstyn basically did what I did in the intro, which is she called Francis Ford Coppola and was like, do you know any hip young directors? Show me your hippest and youngest director. And he was like, hey, have you seen Mean Streets?
Everyone gets high on Ripple and Mean Streets. It looks like he was 32 or 33 when he directed this movie. So a little older than young Tommy, but a little younger than the decrepit crone that is Alice at age 35.
Yes, yuck. It is interesting, though, because I actually looked this up. Ellen Burstyn, I think, was like 42 when she made this movie, which seems like kind of a rare thing for an older woman to play young. It feels like usually it's the opposite, but you know.
The Substance.
That's true.
Demi Moore's playing 10 years younger in The Substance.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Not since Alice doesn't live here anymore. Like there's a
I
wide
believe
gap.
that was what's her name, Coralie Fargo. I believe that was one of her big influences. People want to point out like The Shining and stuff, but the substance is mostly inspired by this movie.
Yes, of course. But yeah, but anyway, to get to my point, I thought this would be like sort of a gritty drama on the streets of New York. I literally knew nothing about this movie. So it was like, because it's Martin Scorsese. So you're like, oh, this is going to be like grappling with, the morality of living outside the law and, but still the importance
Alice
of family.
Is confronting her Catholic faith and whether or not she lives up to it.
Yeah. And then and this is not a knock at all, because I actually, spoiler alert, found this movie to be quite delightful. But it was kind of like a way more kind of upbeat slice of life movie, which felt, at that point, it's not like Martin Scorsese had like such a big backlog of stuff that you could be surprised by something like that. So I'm sure maybe people weren't at the time, but it is kind of cool to now be like, oh, he did movies that were not like as serious before. And not to say that Martin Scorsese makes serious movies. I think the topics that he handles are more serious than this for the most part. Though there's a ton of levity in every movie that he makes, but this definitely seems like an outlier.
True story. I very nearly bought a shirt yesterday of the shark eating a man's penis graffiti from the movie After Hours. So I'm a big fan of early Martin Scorsese comedies. I did not buy the shirt because at a certain point while my hand hovered over the purchase clicker, I said, what the fuck am I doing?
Maybe that's what it is that After Hours is one of the only Martin Scorsese movies I haven't seen, which I do really want to see, but because I'm kind of waiting for it to be in a movie theater again. I don't really want to watch it. And I keep like anytime it is like showing in a movie theater, I can't make it, but so I'm kind of saving it almost. But I hear it's really good.
I'm a big fan, but we are not talking about that movie. No. We are talking about this movie, and I had a very similar experience that this is, I'm going to say, maybe out of every movie we've seen for the show, on the older side, this is the least I knew going in. I knew it was like I did think it was more of a drama than the kind of dramedy that it is. But I was aware that it, like, I knew that it took place in a restaurant, mostly from the TV show adaptation, although they do not get to the restaurant for a while.
No. I also, until we started talking about it amongst ourselves, I did not make the connection from Alice to Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. I think...
Well, kiss my grits, Veronica.
Well, I knew Alice existed, and I'm sure at some point in my life, someone said, oh, isn't it weird that it was like a spin-off of a Martin Scorsese movie, but that was not like anywhere accessible in my brain. And I was like, oh, that's weird.
Well, the funny thing is, like, it actually weirdly does translate well to a 70s era sitcom because that was such a catchphrase era. And this movie is so... the language is such a plot point in the movie. First, before we get into that, for anyone who doesn't know, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore is about a woman living in Socorro, New Mexico, which, as she says, sucks. Socorro sucks. But she was an aspiring singer as a child, as we see in a flashback that I will discuss in a minute. But she is now married to a guy who sucks. Real jerky jerk pants.
He's the Socorro of men.
Don't worry. He dead as fuck in a few minutes. He gets in a bad truck accident, fairly violent one.
Yeah.
Going by the tone of the rest of the movie, we see his head like impaled on the windshield. Not whatever you're imagining. It's less than that, but it is surprising. And so she and her young, very precocious 12-year-old son hit the road. She's going to go back to Monterey to live her dream that she had as a child of being a professional singer. However, things stop her in the way, and she ends up in first Phoenix with a real terrible guy played by Harvey Keitel. And then later, she ends up in Tucson with a
Tucson is weird.
Nice.
Unlike
God, Tucson is weird. Audrey says Tucson is weird. But she ends up with a nicer guy. I want to talk about this, played by Chris Christopherson. And then she ends up working in a restaurant. And the question is she going to keep going? Is she going to leave? All this stuff. But first, I want to start with that prologue and the language. The prologue we start with, it harkens back to, it's either Gone with the Wind, which makes sense because that's also about a woman who loses everything. It's also Wizard of Oz. I'm like, is it referencing other movies? And these are just the only movies that I, as someone born,
you only watch movies
years.
From 1939. That is your frame of reference. I don't know
that many from the era, but the movie starts and we see this flashback done in this, but we got the typeface, everything done to look like a big studio movie. They're in a backlot, not a backlot. They're in a soundstage, big studio movie from the 30s. We've got Gone with the Wind or Wizard of Oz style credits, and then the child speaks. Young Alice aged 8, and I was like, wait, is that kid, is this dialogue dubbed by an adult? And I rewatched her line over and over again.
I thought it was.
She says, it is. Yeah. It is. Because she says, by Christ, I'm going to be a famous singer. By Christ, I will. And the tell is that I realize why they're doing it, is that the child actor is not saying Christ.
Oh, you think that was the only reason?
She's clearly, if you watch, that's the tell. Her lips are not moving Christ. She's saying, no,
but I guess my question is like, you think that's the reason why they did the dubbing entirely? Not that is the tell, but
I honestly do, because
I think it has like a thematic meaning to me. But yes, please.
Well, it took me a while through the movie before I realized, we are supposed to be legitimately shocked by the language the characters are using in this movie. Not like shocked, like offended, but that is a major plot point. The fact that Alice and her son Tommy have dirty mouths. And then later Flo, they finally, Alice and Flo, the other waitress at the restaurant, they finally unite on the fact that Flo has a even more creative dirty mouth.
That is not at all how I read that, but this is so interesting.
Well, I think legitimately, I think that's the joke. Okay. Pause for a second. As we watch these movies, as we've been doing this show now for 80 years.
Since 1939.
It's so funny that one of the biggest things that's blown my mind watching these old movies is how much time does affect art. And that should be obvious. That's literally the premise of our show. But it is, whenever we watch, say, a movie that's 50 years old, which
like
is,
this one.
We've done we did Goldfinger. So we have done 60-year-old movies.
Yeah.
But when I watch a movie like this, I realize how much is being said that I am missing, just like naturally. Like, I don't know exactly what the movie is trying to say about Chris Christopherson's character having a prominently placed painting of the Kennedy brothers. I don't know. I can guess, but I don't know. And it was only after the fact that I realized the joke of the opening scene. I'm pretty sure I just watched this movie an hour ago. This might be a case where I haven't done that much research. I'm sorry. I really wish I could have done a lot of research about women's liberation at the time this movie was come, all sorts of stuff. But I didn't. So I might say some foolish things in this episode. But I really think the joke of the prologue is that we get this old school, old classic Hollywood movie, and then the child actor curses in a way, she says ass, I think, as well, that a movie of the time never would. And it completely went over my head until I tried to figure out why the child's dialogue was dubbed. Because just like it didn't even sound like cursing to me. The idea of a child using the Lord's name in vain does not even register as offensive to me as a, agnostic person in 2025.
I mean, I read that initial scene entirely differently because,
Please.
So to me, it seemed like the reason why the girl was dubbed is because the entirety of the movie, essentially following the scene, we have her romanticize going back to Monterey, where she is from, and romanticizing how nice it was there, and this is the place that's going to solve all of our problems. And so to me, the reason why it was dubbed was because to indicate that this is not actually like how things were. This is like her memory, and she is infusing it with her voice because she's now an adult who is hearkening back to the time before.
Do you think that was Ellen Burstyn's voice dubbing the child's voice?
I think so.
I mean, I certainly agree with you that it's supposed to be idealized. That is the idea.
Yeah.
We are supposed to read her vision of going back to Monterey. As David says to her, she says it was easy in Monterey, and he says, you were a child in Monterey.
So that's exactly what it is. So to me, it felt like, the reason why it's dubbed is because it's fake. It's all like in her head, and she is remembering something that never was, but it's her memory of it. Yeah.
But then why does she?
Well,
okay,
it
if
could
you were
be
going
that,
to do that, wouldn't you make the dubbing
weird about having the kid say shit or something, or the Lord's name, and so they had that. But maybe. Yeah, I don't know. That part is slightly odd to me, but I would also kind of push back against you saying that she has a foul mouth. I think like the reason why she and Flo initially do not connect is because like she actually abhors that language. She actually tries to distance herself from that language. And then eventually she kind of realizes that, oh no, I should actually be true to how I am. But I feel like at the beginning of the movie, Alice has like a higher idea of herself. She perceives herself as higher than the type of people, the type of person that Flo is. And she perceives herself to be classier, someone who would not be using that language. That's why she kind of like cries when Flo has that outburst after which they bond. I think is because in that point, Alice realizes that like, oh yeah, my son talks like that. And actually maybe I also talk like that to my son. So I am no better. And we can actually connect on this level. So yeah, to me, that was that scene was about.
I agree, and I both agree and disagree. We're same with like the prologue. We're coming to the same conclusions, even though we disagree about details. Like I do, obviously, I think the reason the prologue is the way it is like you said, it's idealized. But I think it's very possible. I do think you don't think anyone would be talking like that in a 1939 movie. By Christ, I will. Like,
I mean, but no, but I think people would totally be talking like that in the 1974 movie. I don't. My point is that
I agree. I think
don't
that's supposed
think
to be
the
a
language
joke.
that they use in this movie post that scene would be out of place in a 1974 movie and would shock viewers watching it in 1974.
I don't mean shocked like people fainted watching The Exorcist.
But I don't think it would
earlier.
be that out of the ordinary. This is already well into the 70s, like new age cinema. Like I don't think using that language would be that terrifying, or like not even terrifying, that like surprising.
I mean, literally. I mean, like culturally, she uses rough language for a lady. I think that that is supposed to be read as that.
I don't know.
I wonder if Ellen Burstyn
did not perceive it as that, but maybe I'm wrong.
I wonder if Ellen Burstyn was typecast as the actress in movies where kids curse.
Yeah, that's true. She's like, I have an experience with children who say a lot of naughty words. I would say but this kid definitely had to do less, crucifix fucking. So that's good.
Well, they cut that scene, and it was with Flo's safety pin cross, so it was actually really painful. But go back to what you said. She does. While I 100% agree that a major thing of the movie is that she thinks she's above all these people and that she couldn't be happy with them, I do think like a major character trait is that she has a sassy foul mouth. It's a joke when Tommy curses in front of David and she says, "I don't know where he got it." Mm-hmm. And literally Tommy says, Think hard about that, lady. I mean,
for sure. I'm not saying like
that
it's not a character trait for her that she uses that language. I'm just saying that I don't think at the time that was meant to be perceived as like, oh, look, she's not like all the other women. She uses this language. I think it was just her character,
Well, that being said, I think there's a major motif throughout this movie of women doing in what at the time would have been viewed as inherently masculine things. Because I think that's one of the major themes of the movie, and it is this kind of thing that when you come to a movie this old, you have to interpret, you have to try to understand what people would have read it. I think Tommy's behavior as a very disrespectful child would have been viewed as not shocking, but like, oh man, nowadays, like we've had decades and decades of smart aleck kids. I don't know how iconic the Tommy character. Well, think about how much of a literal scandal it was in the early 90s that Bart Simpson made fun of Homer.
Oh, for sure. I'm not necessarily saying that people might have perceived Tommy's character as kind of a smart aleck. He definitely is, but I thought, to me, the point of drawing him like that was to kind of illustrate how close a relationship he has with his mom, like how tight-knit of a group they are. They're not like an authority figure and kind of like an unreachable authority figure and a child who basically does what he is told. They're a far more equal relationship. There's a bunch of scenes where, she has to have like the deeper conversations you would have with a kid as a result of like their lot in life. And I think what I liked about it is that a lot of the time they kind of talk to each other in the same level. So to me, it didn't, I guess, I can't know what, like, how people reacted to this movie back in the day outside of the reviews. But to me, it was actually something very nice about the movie that
I don't think we're disagreeing.
Yeah. No, I guess like I think you are saying that the language that is being used in this movie was meant to be provocative. And to me, I think the language used in this movie actually meant to kind of indicate the closeness of the parent-child unit.
Yeah, Again, I don't think we're disagreeing. I think it's meant to be like, it's surprisingly crude. I think it was read as surprisingly crude, but like with the Flo character, we are supposed to view the crudity as like charming. and something be won over. I disagree. One thing I do disagree with you. I think she's not crying in that scene. We're supposed to think she's about to cry, but when she is crying, but when she turns around, she's laughing.
Yeah, she's like cry laughing. You think she's crying, but essentially she kind of has that realization, and she finally kind of almost breaks character, right? Because she had that kind of like more of a tighter knit, like hoity-toity waitress character that she was putting on at the diner before. And that was kind of her opportunity, or I don't know her opportunity, but this is where kind of like she broke the character. And she's like, I have to admit, I do find this funny. I do actually like you. You know, can we be friends now and sunbathe in the street?
I mean, which is a beautiful shot. Yeah. And this movie, I have to imagine the movie this reminded me the most of is one of my favorite movies of recent years, Support the Girls. And I have to imagine this is a heavy reference. The scene of them hanging out on the rooftop in that movie felt very much like the sunbathing scene in this movie.
I love that. Can we talk briefly about the sunbathing scene, just to say that it's kind of a funny joke reveal too, because that whole scene is done in pretty beautiful close-up, because he has them in this profile where their faces are sort of framing one another's, and then you're not entirely sure what they are, and then when he pans out to that beautiful wide shot, they're basically in sort of like they're in a dust-strewn like side alley with like dust in their face, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great." And I thought that was such a sweet scene.
I was curious. I'm like, is it a purposeful reference? Because in both scenes, in this scene, it could be that they're at the beach. It seems like they're at the beach, and it's only when we go wide out. And in Support the Girls, they literally say, if you close your eyes and listen to the cars on the highway, it sounds like the ocean. And I just searched, and Scott Tobias's review or article for the reveal about the Support the Girls specifically says that scene in that movie is a reference to this scene in this one.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's not from Andrew Bujalski's mouth himself, but it definitely feels it. That whole movie is very similar to this in tone and subject. But back to, I think, the last thing to say about the language is this is just further proof of the way time affects movies. Because I think we're very much on the same page about what this movie is like kind of going for, except for some things which I want to talk about that I'm not 100% sure. We just 50 years later, we were only born, we were born less than just a little. I was born just a little bit over a decade after this in 87. But I genuinely can't. I know. I genuinely can't fully appreciate exactly what this movie was saying in every way, because I don't know exactly how crude the language was. We get the very funny scene where the guy, funny and horrible, where the guy tells her to spin before he hires her. Yeah. And she says, "Why? I sing out of my mouth, not my ass." But then when Flo says, "Kiss me where the sun don't shine," she acts like that is a much more shocking thing to say. So I genuinely don't know. Is it like you're saying that this is part of her character being in denial, or is it just, I don't know.
Yeah. I think,
but it's interesting.
I think to me, actually, about, not necessarily about this point, but I feel like in general, I think kind of a dead giveaway to me of a movie that doesn't necessarily hold up. It could still be a really fun and great movie, but something that would kind of like, perk up my hearing or something would be like stuff like if that guy said, "Turn around, I want to see what you look like," and then she would have done it. Like, that to me is like kind of like would be like the more old-fashioned way to play that scene. And I feel like what's nice about this movie to me was that it actually, for the most part, obviously there's stuff that have aged, but for the most part, in terms of like the attitude of this movie, I feel like it's still like fairly current and relevant, which is kind of surprising for a movie from 1974 about feminism, essentially. Like, you would think that would age way more poorly than this has.
Well, and
I guess we can start talking about the Chris Christopherson of it all.
Well, I have a question to start that topic, but first I'm like you talk about it aging. You know, we are currently 50 years later with a Republican Party both beyond stripping bodily autonomy, but trying to get rid of no-fault divorce. And then Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore came out almost exactly 100 years after Ibsen's Dollhouse. A Doll's House?
I think
I'm a
just
theater major. I'm a fucking
Dollhouse.
theater major.
I am not a theater major. I'm a Broadway attender.
But a famous play about how scary women's lack of financial independence is, amidst other things. But so, yeah, it's unfortunately not a topic that has lost its timeliness. I want to talk about what the movie is saying about womanhood in general, but I think we've gotten our segue was too good. So I guess gentlemen come first. Let me ask you, I'll start with this. Veronica, this is a movie that introduces its love interest telling a strange woman that he'd like to see her smile while she's at work. What do you think Alice Doesn't Live Here thinks about Chris Christopherson's David?
Oh boy, Ludacris Christopherson. Yeah, he's probably the one bum note in that movie for me. You know, only a few minutes ago, I was kind of saying like, oh, how this movie doesn't feel as old as it is. But like, that is where the movie feels old to me. I feel like unlike the Harvey Keitel character, which was in an older movie, we could have potentially seen her tough it out in a relationship with this asshole and be abused all the time. But she...
Even with Rita there?
Yeah. But like, she knew to run away and all that. Whereas like here, I suppose he is not, you know, a parade of red flags as the Harvey Keitel character was. But yeah, he is still kind of like... Probably the people who have introduced the no-fault divorce bill would find Chris Christopherson to be a stand-up guy and like a great role model. So it just felt like, yeah, it just felt, it's just like very old-fashioned. It felt like one of those things where like, the stuff that he said was like subtle enough that I feel like people who might not be kind of listening to that stuff, like say an older person were to watch this movie, they would probably not like see much wrong with it. But I feel like you and I would. Like, I think like women my age would. Women probably of older time would too, but they would maybe not like feel like they could express that. So I don't know where I'm going with it. It's just to say that, yeah, I did not like him. I feel like he was bad in so many ways because there was the smile a little bit more stuff, but there was also the stuff where he was like an asshole to her kid. And to me, that's... given her character previously, who she is in relation to her kid, whereas like he's kind of the number one, the person I want to protect the most. It felt very uncharacter-like for her to even be entertaining coming back to him following that. And that's why I say it was kind of like a bum note in an otherwise very lovely movie.
It is... It is really weird. The thing that I think really like bounces for people from modern audience is that this is a movie that, like you said, where some of the dialogues very could be now. When he does spank Tommy, he says, she says, "Did you hit him?" And he says, "Yeah," and he deserved it. And she says, "That's what men who hit kids always say."
Yeah.
And I don't know where we were on the idea of corporal punishment in 1975, but I feel like obviously there are still people today who think it's okay to hit your child, although every expert says that's 100% wrong. But even I think I was very occasionally lightly spanked as a kid, but like even in like the early 80s, it was still considered not. She seems to take a firm, hard stance on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes sense because she's been with, like, she says she was genuinely scared of Donald, her husband who dies in the beginning. And we get then they have their big fight. She leaves Tommy on the highway, which is another thing we could talk about. But then she has this big heart-to-heart with Flo, where she says, "I just don't know how to live without a man." She has the whole conversation about how she thought that Donald was protecting her, but he wasn't. He was just there. And then she says, "I don't know how to live without a man." Flo says, "You do." And then the movie ends with her getting back with David in the next scene. And I think, and you could tell me if you're wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, I have to turn off my fucking text messages. Oh my God. And it is not important.
Jon is very popular, ladies and gentlemen. Someone is blowing up his DMs.
It is friends sharing videos of their cats. I don't have a cat. I couldn't join in even if I wanted to. But they all have to give an opinion on each cat video that comes in. Get dogs, people. Just get fucking dogs. Anyway.
All right, that's the segue.
I'm kidding, cat fans in the audience. That would be as offensive a thing I could say as if I said hit your kids. But I think we're supposed to read it as good that she got with him. Yeah. I think we're supposed to read. My interpretation is that we're supposed to think that her dreams of singing are a little foolhardy. I don't think we're supposed to think she's actually that good. Hell, unsurprisingly, Chris Christopherson's a better singer when he sings. But then we get literally everyone who complained about the last shot of The Departed, a shot that I fucking love. We find out that Martin Scorsese's love of very blunt visual punchlines started much earlier when we see them literally walking by a motel called the Monterey in the last shot of the movie. The whole, I don't know what you think. Monterey has always seemed to represent in this movie an idealized home. Mm-hmm. I read that as saying, well, they found their home. It's here. Is that how you interpreted that shot?
I interpreted it less. I do agree with you. So like her getting back with David is meant to be, I think, a happy ending. But then I think the Monterey motel does kind of undermine that a little bit because it is kind of, it's like, yeah, the best you can do is a motel called Monterey kind of a thing. So it felt like more of a sour note. So then maybe it got me thinking maybe he does realize, I mean Martin Scorsese or the writer, I don't know who came up with that idea that maybe it is not, or maybe it is the idea of just like, your life is just not going to be idyllic at all. So you might as well kind of settle for, Monterey Motel, which is, I guess, David and the life that you kind of have here. Yeah, I don't know.
But what Flo says something like, what you do in life is you have to find out what you want and basically just go for it. Like, that's kind of the gist of what she says, right? Which would seem to be a movie about following your dreams.
Yeah.
I think we can say to start is that this is a movie written and directed by men. That being said, it seems like in the production, Ellen Burstyn was really the person kind of leading the charge because she was the famous actress, and Scorsese was the young nobody getting his big break. So let's start simply. We can circle back to David. Do we think the movie thinks she's a good singer?
No, I don't think so.
It ain't Peggy Lee.
Yeah. I think she's like, she understands that herself. Yeah. I think, yeah, I think so. And I think the movie does, want her to probably like, I think maybe the sort of the moral of the movie, if you will, is the idea of just like, at a certain point, you can still have a pretty good life, maybe without achieving all of those goals, essentially. So, yeah. And I think in that one is like, yeah, you kind of realize you're not a good singer, but you could still be, a good mom, a good, worker in other fields, a good friend. She seems to be a very good friend to people. So, yeah.
When she goes back to David, the thing that makes her go back to David is that he says he's willing to sell his ranch to move to Monterey with her, which I think we're supposed to take as the opposite of what Donald did when she was young, when he said, no wife of mine is going to be a singer. And this is a man who is willing to not only accept her dreams, but help facilitate them. And I think we're supposed to read that as, right? We're supposed to read that as the big thing he's doing, that he actually does care about her dreams. And in the world of 1975, a man caring about his female partner's dreams is like a big thing.
Well, I think it's more like he just wants, I think... I don't know that we're supposed to read it as like he thinks she's a good singer, but rather like he is willing to make a sacrifice in order to make her happy.
But then they don't do it.
But then she, and maybe, I mean, that's kind of like the sad part about this movie, which I kind of like, is that it's kind of realistic, like it's probably one of those things where, you don't want to uproot your kid again to like go to another thing that you deep inside know is very idealized and probably not real. So if you find the person who makes a sacrifice for you and shows you in their way that they like you, despite us knowing in the year 2025 that he's kind of a dick, like, you go with it. You realize that happiness is on the inside and you found your happiness or whatever, But it's kind of a realistic happiness. It's not like the fairy tale happiness.
I guess there's nothing else we can really say about David. I think we're both kind of like, the movie thinks he's a great guy. We, as modern audiences, are not sure. Is that a safe?
I think so. I think the movie is more positive on David than we are. And I also kind of wonder, I guess that's the thing that I am not sure of. I don't know what Chris Christopherson's reputation at the time was. And I almost wonder if it's like when he joined the cast, he was like, okay, I can't be a total asshole. I am like, a lovable country rock star or whatever. So
I don't think that's the case. I mean, this was the guy he was in. I'm not that familiar with his work, but I know he was, he was the that generation's alcoholic Stars Born lead. But
I also don't know how maybe that Stars Born is more, sympathetic to that star character. But anyway, it almost at times, because he's like such a big name, it felt to me like, oh, they're probably like are like brushing off a lot of his behavior, making him look better than someone who's more of like a character actor would play.
I don't know about that. And Chris Christopherson as like a man, I mean, the things we know about him, that I know about him as a person my age, I know that he's one of the only people who stood up for Sinead O'Connor. Like he seems like,
yeah, I mean, I don't really know anything about him.
Yeah, is that he was a great guy with good politics, I think is the read. So I certainly don't think, from my limited knowledge of him, and he just passed a few months ago, Ripple, high on Ripple. I don't think he would have been someone who's like, my shit kicker's got to be a cooler dude.
Okay, that's good. That's nice. That's refreshing. All right. Well, do you want to wrap things up by talking about the Ripple, Miss Ripple?
I want to talk when they get to Tucson, Tommy goes to a music class, and Tommy walks out with, I don't know about you, but I was positive it was a little boy for the first 30 seconds of that scene until the boy was like, oh, my name's Audrey. I mean, my real name's Doris. And I'm like, the kid's got two girls' names. And then I went, oh my God, that's fucking Jodie Foster.
Were you not like, the kid opened her name and you're like, oh, it sounds like the detective from season 4 of True Detective? Because she actually has essentially the same voice. It's kind of cool.
It took me 30 seconds in that scene, and I was
like, you know what? I was waiting for Jodie Foster. I saw her name in the credits. I was like, I'm so excited. I love Jodie Foster.
I had missed it. So it was a complete surprise for me. Well, okay. So Audrey appears. Are we supposed to? This is another thing about like the movie being, from a different time. What are we supposed to read? Are we supposed to think, oh, this little girl dresses like a boy?
I think you were supposed to think she's a tomboy.
Or is that just the way girls dressed at the time?
I think, tomboys exist even back then.
Because she then wears a big skirt.
But it felt like the skirt was almost, I don't know, maybe that was me reading into it, but maybe that is like something her mom gave to her, because the skirt was like very long. It had like this old lady pattern on it. It almost seemed to me like it's either her mom forced her to wear that skirt, or maybe she thinks that she needs to be wearing a skirt, but she doesn't really have like, a sense of style that way. So she's like, okay, like this skirt will do, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. She read to me as a tomboy, just like, yeah.
Well, I did. So I saw throughout this movie a bunch of things about showing female characters doing what would traditionally be masculine things. And like her last thing is saluting everyone, right? So she is like this tomboy character. And then we have characters like Flo, who talks like, I think someone from the audience would be like, oh, that lady talks like a sailor. What do you think this movie is saying about gender and women's place in society in the mid-70s?
I mean, I think to me it's trying to say that, hey, there's like many different ways of being a woman, and a woman is not necessarily just a meek housewife who needs a man to succeed. It feels like kind of simplistic to say, but maybe it needed saying in the time where you might have alluded to, like, women could not get credit cards or bank accounts. So,
when was that law passed?
I don't remember exactly, but I remember reading around this time where Jane Curtin was talking about how when she got on SNL, she could not like open a credit card.
74, 1 year earlier, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was passed.
Yeah. But potentially probably for a while after, probably not everything was.
That law was to prohibit discrimination. So I think like it was already heading that direction. But that was like the law being like, hey, you can't, as a bank, tell a woman to leave if she wants to open a bank account.
But yeah, so I think to me it's just like it's showcasing. I think it's not only is it showcasing like the different ways you could potentially be a woman, but also kind of showing single parenthood. It seems like back then, for the most part, definitely on television, but I think even in Hollywood movies, I mean, the Hays Code was repealed or kind of died down only in like the late 60s, and like the whole thing was like you present like this very stereotypical like suburban family unit in movies, and I feel like this movie is showing a more realistic, a loving depiction of a single parent home. At least for me, like I grew up with a single parent, a single mom, and I really found this movie very touching and relatable about that. And so, yeah, I don't know if it was like their goal, but I thought that it definitely like achieved that for me.
Yeah. In the 60s, women gained the right to have a bank account. In 74, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act passed, which made discrimination on the basis of gender illegal. So,
ooh, wow,
it's, they get
RBG
the right,
did
and then
that, I think.
Yeah. Oh, is that true?
On the Basis of Sex was a movie also starring, or like about her, right? She was a lawyer.
They get the it's like anything, you get the rights, and then 10 years later they have to make the law to be like, hey, we gave them the right.
Yeah, exactly.
To be clear, you have to do it. It's
oh yeah, go ahead.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, it just goes back to the thing I was talking about earlier of like movies, and I feel like I say this every time we watch an older movie now, but like movies, the details and the nuances kind of get lost because we're here having to kind of guess at what the little moments mean because we can tell they mean something. But we get the full story. It's like if you watch a movie now, little comments 50 years from now, little comments, people would be like, oh, that was during Trump 2. I think something was going on, something like that.
Yeah.
If everyone's not dead in 50 years, obviously. But I'm not saying don't watch old movies. I'm saying I think inspires a lot of contextual research, which is interesting and rewarding.
But I think it's interesting and rewarding if you want to do that. I also personally find it interesting, but I think a good movie, and we kind of talked about this before, but I feel like, and this one does succeed in this for the most part, is that like you can still enjoy it and you can still like have a very good experience watching it, and it feels still maybe not fresh, but at least like relevant and engaging. And, I think this movie achieved that.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't think we've said it enough. It's really funny.
Yeah, it's really good.
My first laugh out loud moment, and it's a very sad, dark joke, but when she goes to the bar, the first bar that hires her to sing, and she starts talking to the nice boss, and he clearly thinks like she's having like a sad lady day or something, and he's like, hey, I don't know how to help. I don't even got a piano in here. And she's like, yeah, my husband just died. I don't even got a piano in here. And I don't know how to raise my kid. Lady, I don't even got a piano. It's that very funny thing of him just responding with his jokey response 3 times, clearly not knowing how to respond. Very funny. Yeah, I don't know. You wanna review it?
Yes, I do want to add one tiny thing.
Please.
Okay, I just want to also just praise the child actor Alfred Lutter III. I thought he was great. I feel like I hate precocious children most of the time, but he felt like a real kid. Also, I found him on LinkedIn. He's a founder of a tech consultancy company. Huh. He graduated with multiple degrees from Stanford University. Anyway, I hope he approves my friend request on LinkedIn. I want to be friends.
He was in the original Bad News Bears, which I have not seen.
And he was also young Woody Allen and Love and Death. He
was also, he reprised his role in the Alice TV show, but only for the pilot. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, maybe they're like, this kid is aging too fast or too sassy.
I would guess that might be part of it.
Yeah,
because sassy kid is less funny when you're fucking 18.
Yeah.
Did you see some of the Stranger Things kids at the Met Gala the other day?
No. Old?
They look so old.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're stranger adults.
They're in their mid-20s. That's what happens when you make TV shows too slowly.
All right. Yeah, let's rate it. All right.
Okay.
3.
I think I got it.
All right. 3, 2.
3, 2, 1.
A-.
B plus.
Okay.
I feel like we used to do the countdown together. I wasn't trying to step on your toes.
Oh, no. I thought we were too, but I think with the way that we're recording it, it felt like we were very out of sync. So I was just like, I'm going to let one of us do it.
Fucking Zoom. Finally killed Skype. Skype's going out of business.
I'm very sad about that. That's how I talk to my mom.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's okay. WhatsApp exists. We can move on.
I've been hearing a lot about Signal these days. It seems like people really like Signal.
Yeah, but I don't know if they do like voice chats. It's only for military operation sharing in my book.
I see. This is the kind of detail that if someone listened to this conversation 50 years later, they'd be like, what about Signal? What are they talking about? What the fuck's a Signal? Also, the nukes have dropped and we live in caves now.
But they are listening to Box Office Time Machine.
We're the only thing that lasts.
That would be amazing if we are the roaches of podcasting.
That feels like some kind of like sad Twilight Zone short story of a future where like there's been an apocalypse and the only thing that survives is conversations about art that doesn't exist. So that people can only listen to the podcast and imagine what the movie looked like.
Well, it's also interesting from a different thing where like you never really know what stands the test of time. I mean, I'm not going to like put us in the same category as like a Moby Dick or something, but Moby Dick, famously was not the biggest book of its time. And now it's kind of representative of books of its time. So like, you never know.
Do you think this podcast is finally going to find an audience like posthumously after we both die?
Potentially. Let's try it.
We're the Vincent Van Gogh of podcasts.
Exactly. All right. Well, what else have you seen, John?
Well, you know what I saw? I saw a little movie called Sinners. You might know. We already talked about that. But I saw it again with my parents.
Oh, that's right.
I did. And I thought it was really interesting. And I'm just going to quickly read things that I noticed on a second viewing. The opening animated bits, when they tell us about the people who've got the magical musical ability, says different people had different names for it. And they show 3 cultures: the Irish, the Choctaw, and Black Delta, which to me reinforces the idea that those were the cultures the vampires attacked, which probably means Remick was maybe a Irish musician who was attacked, was a previous victim, who then metaphorically assimilated, sold out, whatever. When Remick first approaches the Juke, he talks like a white record producer talking to young black musicians, and I find that really funny. The last thing Smoke does before dying at the end is reject the Klansman's money after a whole movie of only caring about money, specifically real white man's money. I really noticed the religious subplot this time, the view of Christianity as a form of assimilation, forced assimilation. We get both Slim and Remick talking about Christianity being forced on them. When Sammy's father tries to get him to drop the guitar at the end, his voice becomes more anglicized as he's talking in that scene. He says, "Your heart, your soul, your voice belongeth to the Lord." That being said, I think the final post-credit scene of Sammy, younger Sammy, playing This Little Light of Mine is designed to kind of put a little more nuance to the seeming anti-Christianity. And it kind of harkens back to what Remick said, that these words were forced on us, but they still bring me comfort. I also think that Coogler was very concerned about audiences turning on Grace after, I'm really getting into spoilers about a movie we didn't talk about. He gives Grace a lot of very sympathetic framing that I think is very, very much designed. He does not want the audience to turn on her after the choice she made. And I think he realized that when you give make a character make a decision that leads to other characters' deaths, even if you don't want people to hate that character, they could. And I think he does a lot of very smart framing things with how he depicts her both right before and after to help protect that character. Anyway, it bumped up the movie for me. A second watch, it bumped it up. I liked it even more the second time. I still think the vampire stuff is rushed, but that's a great movie.
Nice. Cool. I have seen Lost Highway. I'm on a mission to watch all the David Lynch movies I haven't seen in a movie theater.
Ooh. I never liked Lost Highway. Really.
I
like parts of it.
I did not really like it either. And even like the more that I kind of read about it, I feel like it did not sway me towards a more positive, I guess, opinion of it. To me, it still felt like very, just like there aren't characters in this movie. There's these like caricatures of people, and Robert Loggia, who I think is amazing in this movie. He's very fun. But like otherwise, they're just kind of like archetypes interacting with each other and things being weird for the sake of being weird. But the explanation of like, oh, it's dream logic. Sure, but I feel like it didn't feel like it like necessarily served a purpose for me that made the movie feel emotionally interesting. But yeah, I'm glad I've seen it. I also, one last thing, the worst music. Like it uses a lot of needle drops. No, I think like the score is great.
You're not a Marilyn Manson fan?
Oh, like, you know what? At the time I probably was, but when they hit you in a movie theater and they're so loud, I was just like, oh, woof, this is the worst 90s music had to offer.
I might be wrong about this, but I think it's very possible. Is Lost Highway kind of, can we thank Lost Highway from bringing the Nine Inch Nails guys to the world of movies? Or were they already doing movie stuff, or would they have done movie stuff without it?
Are Nine Inch Nails guys in it? Are they?
Isn't that because then Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails is in Twin Peaks: The Return.
Oh, I think like this
and I
one
think they met.
Only what's his face?
It was
Iggy
produced, yeah.
and Marilyn Manson are in it. I did not see Trent Reznor
produced the soundtrack.
Oh, he did? Okay. Well, maybe potentially.
Yeah.
So, you know, there maybe when you start that low, the only way is up. Sorry, I didn't mean to hate on it that much. I had an okay time watching it, but
he had already produced the soundtrack for both for Natural Born Killers. So it wasn't Lost Highway wasn't the first one. So he was already on a path towards movies. Towards
the Social Network. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I saw it. I'm bummed it's not better, I guess would be my verdict on that one. All right.
Knowing that it was inspired by the O.J. Simpson case and David Lynch being like, how can you kill your wife and then just act like you're a happy guy? That makes the movie more interesting to me, but I agree. I've only seen it once, but it was not my favorite.
Yeah, I think there's interesting discourse around this movie, but to be honest, like sometimes even interesting discourse is not necessarily something that would salvage a movie for me if it's like not on the screen. So, again, not a hater. David Lynch is great.
The scene with Robert Blake, still one of the great David Lynch scenes.
Oh, he's great.
Bummer that Robert Blake is a murderer.
I did not know this. I assumed that he was like convicted, but apparently not. So.
Oh no, is he out? Is he going to come after me?
He was
after I
never
said that?
convicted. He was found guilty in a civil trial, much like OJ. But anyway, on that note,
he died 2 years ago. He's
not
coming after us.
Yeah, he is dead. On that note, I guess we'll see y'all at the movies. No, I'm joking. We will be talking about, I assume, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning next time.
I cannot wait. Toot. I think we made that exact same joke last time we talked about a Mission Impossible movie.
Yes. And kiss my grits.
I was doing it. Kiss my grits. They don't say that in the movie. They say it in the show.
Kiss my grits.
Kiss my grits.